Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This past Tuesday, Justice Marc-André Blanchard ruled that the secular law, Law 21, is constitutional. Most of the law was upheld, while the clause concerning English language school boards and banning members of the provincial legislature from wearing face coverings was annulled. However, activists challenging Law 21 are not finished this work. Tonight, we're looking at how activists are moving forward, and I'm currently joined by campaign coordinator for Non à la Loi 21, Ehab Lotayef. Hello, Ehab.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. So I guess I want to start by asking you, what was your reaction to this ruling?
To be honest, I wasn't very optimistic from the beginning. I didn't expect much. Of course, it takes somebody like me who's an activist some time to grasp the details of a legal judgment. So the issue of the English language school board and how he came to that conclusion was a bit of a confusion to me personally. As a human rights activist, I can't grasp it myself. I can't grasp that within the same province there would be some laws for teachers in one school board and different laws for teachers in another school board. But then when I spoke to some legal experts, I understood a little bit better. Not that I'm convinced about it from the logical point of view, but I also started to hear a lot about the comments he made outside of the ruling and how he agreed about many things we were talking about for the past couple of years. So that was a bit encouraging. But let me go back to the fact that I was not disappointed because this is more or less what I was expecting. And my logic is really very simple. A judge at this level, at the Superior Court of Quebec level, cannot go against the laws. And the laws on the book do not allow him to annul this law because it is well crafted legally, and the usage of the notwithstanding clause to shield the law from the Canadian Charter of Human Rights, and the same more or less was done, and the changes that were made in the Quebec Charter of Human Rights really tied his hands. So I'm not judging the judge himself. I'm not judging the ruling himself, but I have been, and I'm more so now, judging our legal system and how fair and just it is when it cannot protect the minorities from the will, even if that will is unjust, of the majority government of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. So what are your next steps to challenge this law, continue to challenging this law?
Well, as you know, when you say you, I don't answer only about Non à la Loi 21. We work in coordination with so many groups, and we have decided and coordinated from the beginning that each one of us will focus on a certain aspect. So when I answer, I'm going to answer based on the wider number of groups that are acting against the law. Of course, on the legal side, on the judicial side, the government already decided to appeal. They decided to appeal because they don't like this exemption of the English school board. But the groups that, the many separate groups that were involved in the lawsuit, most of them have decided also that they are going to appeal. Maybe they didn't officially make that step yet, but from what I know, they're all planning, or most of them are planning to appeal the ruling. And most of them, again, are saying, even in the next step, whether we win or lose, we expect this to be taken to the Supreme Court of Canada anyway. And I hope that at that level of court, there will be more flexibility that the judges will enjoy, that will allow them to speak about the spirit of the law and the purpose behind the notwithstanding clause, and be able to rule misuse of the notwithstanding clause and rule for basic human rights and freedoms of the people affected by such a law.
And so
I will add, no, I will also add that at the same time, we are working on different levels, not only on the judicial level, we're also working on the public level. We are planning PR campaigns because we know that a lot of the work that we need to do needs to be done with the Quebec population as well. We need to have a better understanding in the Quebec society about what's at stake here and why this law is misguided. And we also need to work harder with the politicians. I know that we feel mostly that it is hopeless to work with the coalition Avenir Quebec, the government in power right now. But at least with the other parties, we need to continue working. So with the hope that if they come to power, this law will not be anymore.
Okay. And just to confirm, the side that is challenging Law 21, they have also moved to appeal it.
They have not, as far as I know, Coalition Inclusion Québec, the Canadian Civil Rights Association, National Council of Canadian Muslims, the English Language School Board themselves, I don't think they appealed. It's the government that appealed against them. But I think they're all, within the coming days, they will announce that they will go into the Quebec Court of Appeal.
Okay. And whatever happens with either side, what is the process that follows the appealing of this law?
As everybody on both sides, whether on the government side or on those who want to appeal the law side, we all knew that this is a law that will go all the way to Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Nobody will be satisfied by this ruling of the Superior Court of Quebec. Nobody will be satisfied. At least one side will not be satisfied with the ruling of the Quebec Court of Appeal, and thus it will have to go to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Okay. And are there any upcoming protests or things like that that we could look out for?
Well, on the short term, I mean, we had quite a successful action on the day the judgment was announced 2 days ago. There's nothing that we are planning right now, but we are talking and discussing and planning what the best next steps are, as I said, on the angle of having better awareness among the Quebec society, within the Quebec society, about the dangers of this law. And I think this is a strong part that we should focus on in parallel to continuing to work with the politicians as well.
Okay. And for those who didn't attend this demo that you hosted last Tuesday, could you fill us in a little bit about what happened?
Well, basically, we came together. We had decided that we need to, again, I'll go back to the point that most of us were not very optimistic. We did not expect a win. I mean, at least not much more than what really we got, and some consider this the most possible win. So we had called for a demonstration on Tuesday, as soon as we heard a couple of days before that the judgment will be rendered 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. So we had this demonstration. We had representatives from different groups, from the Canadian Civil Rights Association, from the World Sikh Organization, from the National Council of Canadian Muslims, from other groups as well, and we all and of course we had a lot of supporters there, and we spoke about our disappointment, and we spoke about our next steps that we need to take, and the fact that we have to continue fighting the law as strong as we can on all levels as we possibly can, because really having such a law is really something that is very dangerous. Such a law staying on the books is far more dangerous than the law that generations grew up with, Law 101, the language law, which is one of the, or maybe the most famous law that used the notwithstanding clause before in Quebec. At least the Law 101 they put restrictions on English language, or put precedents for the French language, but did not disallow the English language to be used. In my interpretation of this law, it really makes people of certain religious beliefs choose between following what they consider the religious belief or being able to get employed and earn their livelihood. And this is extremely dangerous. Its danger goes far beyond really this law or the group of people that are directly affected by it. So we need to do our work here. Society has to understand the dangers here. And we know that a large portion of the Quebec society supports this law on a nationalistic level, on a historical level, because we know that many in the Quebec society there's no love between them and religious authorities in general. And they extend that to a law like this law. But the reality is that there is a huge difference between the sweeping powers of this law and the injustices or the reasons that had Quebec distance itself from the church some 60 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm. So speaking on Law 21, Bill 101, and Bill 62, for those who don't know, this is a bill that was passed by the former provincial Liberal government in the fall of 2017. This banned those with face coverings from delivering or receiving public services. This law was suspended by the Liberal, and the Liberal government did not appeal it, planning to instead fight for it if they were reelected, which they were not. With all of this in mind, and as the process of challenging Law 21 is continuing, do you fear that maybe when the fight for Law 21 is over, do you fear that another law similar to this might pop up?
Absolutely. All this is possible, and all this is very important. And that's why I stress again that the real fight, the real struggle is with awareness, is with selling the issue of equal human rights for all to society at large. Unfortunately, the presence of a government like the CAC government that is in power right now, with its populist ways, with its nationalistic ways, doesn't help in spreading more liberal and equality ideas within society, and liberal here with a small l, of course. So it makes it more difficult. So our work is really cut for us. But your point is very well taken. If we don't change the atmosphere, then we can defeat this law after a lot of time, effort, money, and suffering, all only to find another similar law in one way or another pop up 10 years down the road. And this is what we need to keep our eyes on.
Thank you so much. And when we're speaking about Bill 62, I guess I'm curious, were you involved in some way in activism or challenging this law?
When Bill 62 was proposed, we tried to, again, groups I was involved with, tried to talk to the Liberal government at the time and point out the dangers of that law. But mind you, even within the religious groups, within the Muslim community, let me say, the idea of total face covering is in itself controversial. So the boost of energy that was against that law was not the same as it is right now. Yet again, from a human rights point of view, which is where I really come from, more than I come from just as somebody from the Muslim community, I think that these restrictions are all counterproductive. I think society has to be left to find people should see and find the way they want to act or interact, as long as they can contribute and participate in society. This should not be something that is imposed on people, what to wear or how to wear it, as long as they are law-abiding citizens. And law here means logical laws, doesn't mean any whatsoever law that is passed by a government to gain a favor with its own electorate. So any law-abiding citizen who contributes to society should not be subject to these kind of laws at all.
Thank you. And considering, your history in organizing around these things, would you like to identify any certain ways of protesting and challenging laws that infringe upon human rights that are maybe, I guess, successful, maybe more successful than other forms of protesting?
Well, protests have different strategies, and at the end, one has to be strategic. One side of protesting is meant to make the issue you are protesting against and those who are advocating it or supporting it feel that there is considerable opposition, that there is no acceptance to what they are calling for. So that's one side, and that has to continue to happen. But also another side of protesting has to be more strategic from the angle that we need to try to gain allies through these protests rather than alienate people. And since there is a good, we have a good tool here, because most of us are minorities in one way or the other. I mean, you could be white, Caucasian, male, with generally mainstream thoughts or ideologies, but you will find yourself a minority in one aspect of your life. So all of us might belong to a minority if we look at all the aspects of our lives. And or there are loved ones that we love and care about that would fall under the minority definition. And thus, we need to be able to create alliances with all kinds of minorities. And really, it's not just to gain their support, but because we really believe that if this kind of law that affects one minority is allowed to prevail, then who knows which minority and what rights can be stripped 10 years from now because a majority public opinion stands against this idea or that idea. It is a good chance to help evolve rather than restrict the human rights protections in our society. It gives us a chance to really work and advocate for that. And thus, back to 360 degrees to rules and laws that contain clauses like the notwithstanding clause that can be easily, or not so easily, but there is a back door to exempt some groups from applying the human rights standards is a problem in itself. And that is a part of where we should look back and see what are those weak points in our democracy, because democracy, as we learned it, a healthy democracy includes within it, for sure, has to include within it the defense of minority rights. Otherwise, it becomes some sort of law of the jungle of the majority. So if we want to call ourselves a healthy, strong democracy, we have to strengthen those protections of the minorities. Those of us who were unlucky enough to have lived or escaped from regimes that do not protect human rights know very well the dangers of these kind of things. And what I like to remind people all the time, and it's very difficult to make people feel that this is a reality, but societies can very quickly move from a democracy to an autocracy or to some sort of dictatorship or some sort of fascism very quickly, and we should never feel too comfortable and say that this could never happen here. So there is always a reason for us to keep that in our minds and keep that in our sight as we work for human rights and for justice.
Thank you. Just to backtrack a little bit, when you were talking about gaining allies within this movement you're fighting for, is there a certain maybe method you use to gain allies who, you know, are not affected by Law 21?
It's as simple as opening up and making connections with as many groups as possible. There is no lack of minority groups and human rights groups, whether ethnic, whether religious, whether linguistic, whether immigrant rights. There are so many groups on the ground that it's not, the difficulty is not to find the groups. The difficulty is not to point out those groups. The difficulty is to really build channels and build bridges that would make us all understand and be convinced that there's not one group that's using the other. It's really that even if you're not affected today, you could be affected tomorrow. And if you help work against this injustice today, you will find others to work against the injustice that affects you that might or will come tomorrow.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like there's a certain type of irony that there's this law that prevents people from having, certain people from having face coverings while we're in the middle of a pandemic and everyone needs to be wearing a mask, a face covering of some sort?
Well, I don't want to. I mean, it is ironic, and it is. I mean, it can be a good subject for a light discussion about how our world is changing all the time, and we don't know what to expect tomorrow. But really, I don't want to belittle because some people will take it as belittling the need for face covering or for certain precautions in certain times. That is not the counter argument that I would use for somebody who wants to do a certain practice for no practical scientific reason that everybody will be convinced about, but just because he or she believes that that's what they want to do. I don't want to conflate the two together, but it is ironic, and it is funny that if a woman was covering her face and was told not to, and then come 2020 and the starts wearing a mask, nobody would be able to tell her, don't cover your face. So it is ironic in a way.
And thank you so much. Where can we look out for your work and keep up to date with Non à la loi 21?
The easiest place is on our Facebook page, which is Non à la loi 21. I think the at NL21 would be the easiest way to find it on Facebook, and we post everything there. We also have an email list that we send information to our core supporters, but I guess the world is moving little by little away from email towards other social media tools. I'm still old school. I still use and other stuff.
I can appreciate emails. So is there anything that I didn't ask that you think is important for people to know, especially when continuing to challenge Law 21?
No, I will just stress again that if you, whoever you are, if you don't feel that that Law 21 or the restrictions that Law 21 puts is a big deal, please understand that the idea here is respect for what everybody considers a big deal. And the point that I would like to always end with is that the word religious symbols that they are using in this law is itself misleading, because for a Muslim woman who is convinced that covering her hair is a part of her religion, her religious practice, it is not a symbol. It is not a symbol like if I, for example, decide to have a Muslim, like Muslim inspired beard, or hang a chain or a ring that says La ilaha illallah or something. That could be a symbol. That is something that is very optional. But religious practice is really what this law is denying. A religious, so for again, those who are speaking about the law and some of the arguments that we heard, like what's the big deal for the teacher to take her scarf off or hair cover off when she goes into the school and then puts it on? That is a very superficial and naive understanding of why that woman is covering her hair. It is not up to me or up to you or up to anybody to agree or disagree with her practice. But for her, she believes that that is how she should practice her religion. It is like telling really somebody who goes to church on Sunday, don't go to church on Sunday. I mean, it's a part, for her is a core part of the religion. So I hope people would pay some attention to that and try to understand that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to educate us and keep us up to date with what you're doing to continue to challenge this law. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for having me with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a good night.